Good morning, dear students. Today we will continue with the balance part of experimental epidemiology, that is randomized, non-randomized trials. Contents will be non-randomized trials and uses of epidemiology. In non-randomized trials, first let us see what are the conditions we go for non-randomized trials. So in randomized control trials, you all have learnt it in the last class, and these trials may not be possible in all the given conditions due to ethical constraints or administrative difficulties. For example, smoking and lung cancer and induction of virus to study the cancer occurrence may not be possible in all the cases. Sometimes we might have to take up the cases in community level where vast community is involved. So in these kind of situations, for example, like community water fluoridations, randomized control trials becomes difficult. And certain times where you will require long time, or maybe the disease frequency is very low and natural history is very long. So in those cases also the randomized control trials become difficult option. In those situations we consider non-randomized control trials. Here the degree of comparability will be low, and at the same time the chances of spurious result is higher than randomized control trials. So non-randomized trials are similar in design to randomized trials, except that the participants are allocated to the treatment using non-random methods. For example, by following a systematic method, like based on a day or a month of their date of birth. Like when you're doing in the hospital also, or maybe in certain places, like Monday cases I will allot into this group, Tuesday cases I will allot into this group. Those kind of situations, those kind of allotment will be done. It is not randomly done, but you have done it in a systematic method. The examples for this randomized, non-randomized trials are, first one is uncontrolled trials. Now these are trials with no comparison group. So it may be useful in evaluating whether a specific therapy has any value in a particular disease, or to investigate any adverse reaction. We do not have any we don't do any controlling in this, but we would like to know whether it is there without any comparison group with the previous therapy that is done and the new therapy that is being tried. Second is, this is natural experiments. When the experimental studies are not possible in human populations, the epidemiologists identify natural circumstances that will simulate or mimic an experiment. For an example, in respect of cigarette smoking, people who have been separated, like relations within the same family, naturally into two groups, those who are smokers and non-smokers, like that, natural occurrences. So that is natural experiments. Then come to the before and after comparison studies. Here again there are two types, that is before and after comparison studies with control and without control. So the first one will be without control. Let us see. In this type, the incidence of disease is compared before and after the new drug is introduced. Now the events that take place prior to the new drug therapy and after the new drug therapy are compared, and this itself will be used as a standard for comparison. So the experimenter serves as its own control, and this eliminates any group differences. This is the type of study design, before and after comparison studies without control, because the same group will act as its own control. Other one, the classic example for this will be in 1750, Dr. James Lind had done a study on Navy people who had been suffered by scurvy. So he has given a fresh fruit to them and tried to find out whether that scurvy is because of any vitamin deficiency or any because of any fruit. So that was a classic example for this type of study. Another will be cholera transmission by John Snow in 1854. These are the two examples which we can think of. Another will be before and after comparison studies with control. In the absence of control group, that sometimes it becomes difficult to observe how are the findings before and after the treatment procedure, and sometimes it may be misleading. So in these kind of situations, epidemiologists prefer to use control groups, that is natural control groups. Let us see. If a preventive program is to be applied to an entire community, the epidemiologist would prefer to select another community which can act as a control and as similar as possible in respect to the frequency and characteristics of the disease to be prevented. So one of them will be arbitrarily chosen to provide a study group and another one will be a control group. Where two communities are selected, arbitrarily they will be selected, one will be the study group and another one will be the control group. Here, for example, if you see in Australia, they have tried this seatbelt legislation in Victoria. Its use and effects were studied in one of the regions, and they have compared with another region where they have not introduced this law. So that had become a natural control group. With that, experimental epidemiology is over. Let us move on to uses of epidemiology. The uses of epidemiology, the first one will be to study historically rise and fall of disease in population. Epidemiology provides disease profiles and time trends in human populations. And by studying these trends, we can make useful projections regarding the future health problems and other correlations. The first and foremost use of epidemiology to study historically rise and fall of the disease, because we are following the disease in the human populations. This will help us in making projections regarding the future health problems, like the particular disease can happen in this period and particular disease can recur in this period of time. Like this, we can make certain preventive measures to take for those diseases to happen in the future. Second, community diagnosis. This refers to the identification and quantification of health problems in a community in terms of mortality and morbidity rates and ratios. By knowing these morbidity rates and ratios, we can definitely quantify the health problems in that community. By quantifying the health problems in the community, we can definitely prioritize our preventive measures and control measures of the diseases. Most important, by taking up this community diagnosis, we can take the benefit of it. Then coming to planning and evaluation. In the planning, we assess what are the manpower requirements, how much doctors are required, how many hospital beds are required, how many preventive programs should be taken up, what kind of immunization programs should be taken. All this comes under the planning. Even what kind of research to be taken up, we should be doing. All this is done by planning. And as you are all seeing in COVID 2019, we are doing the same thing, like how many people are getting affected, what kind of medical services are required, how many beds are to be provided. Every state government is running behind to take up all the available manpower and all the available machinery or hospitals under them, so that they can provide the required medical services to the people, to their people of that state. And coming to the evaluation, of course, evaluation will definitely help us in finding out whether our program is successful or failure. So evaluation is also equally important as planning. Next use is epidemiology will help us in calculating the individual risks and chances of contracting the disease. I hope this is the best example you all can understand how to develop preventive programs in the community. We have understood how this COVID 2019 is going to contaminate to the people and how it is spreading to others, how people are getting in contact to the other people. It can spread from person to person. All this is done with the help of epidemiology only. Okay, by the application of epidemiological methods, it will be possible to elucidate the causal factors, very important role of another important role of epidemiology. It will help us in finding out the causal factors, the causation of the disease. So once you know the etiology of the disease, you can definitely control the disease. Then coming to completing the natural history of the disease. Now this completing the natural history of the disease, epidemiologist studies the disease pattern in a community in relation to agent, host, and environmental factors. I hope you all remembered in the beginning of our epidemiological principles, we have studied agent, host, and environmental factors. For any disease to happen, we have understood that there has to be interrelationship between the agent, host, and environment. So this keeps him in a better position to fill the gaps in the natural history of the disease than any clinician. Because clinician is concerned of only one individual, whereas an epidemiologist is concerned of the whole community or a whole population. Here he will be looking at every relationship between agent, host, and environmental factors in the causation of the disease. So always epidemiologist stands at an advantage in understanding the disease process, because he is the one who observes the complete disease, natural history of the disease. Then coming to using epidemiological methods, it will be possible to identify new medical syndromes. Since we are observing in the community, we are doing a frequent follow-up with the individual patients, we can be in a better position to understand the medical syndromes that are happening, because at the same time we are following the natural history of the disease completely. So it is easy to, it is possible to identify new medical syndromes. By epidemiological methods, it will be possible to undertake trial, drugs, vaccines, and any new methods of prevention, like how we have done that in our experimental epidemiology. So these are all the uses of epidemiology where we can take the benefit of this specialty. Now coming to the conclusion, epidemiology is the scientific study of factors affecting the health and illness of individuals and populations, and serves as the foundation and logic of intervention made in the interest of public and preventive medicine. So it will definitely play very important role in understanding the health and illnesses of the individuals and populations, and it helps us in providing interventions to prevent the disease in the interest of the public and individual at the same time. It plays a very important role in preventive medicine. It is considered as the cornerstone methodology of public health research and is highly regarded in evidence-based medicine for identifying risk factors for a disease and determining optimal treatment approaches to clinical practice. So it is very important in public health research. It is regarded as very high evidence-based medicine for identifying the risk factors. As I have told you, one of the uses to identify the risk factors of the disease and to determine the optimal treatment approach to clinical practice. Once we read, we understand the uses of epidemiology, epidemiological methods, all these things will help us in determining the optimal treatment. See, once we have studied this particular COVID 2019, all the measures that have been given, all are provided by the epidemiological methods only. All this guidance, prevention is taken by the help of epidemiologists. So, epidemiology plays very important role in preventive medicine, and it is a cornerstone for the public health research. So, with that, our topic of epidemiology comes to an end. I hope you all have understood this chapter. It is very important. Please study. If you have any doubts, please get back to me. Thank you.